Hello, my historians. This is Wendy with AP History Help, and this is the AP History Help podcast, where you will learn everything you need to know about taking AP history classes, from skills to content, from historical thinking skills to themes in history. Whether you're taking or thinking about taking AP World History, AP US History, or AP European History, this podcast is for you. As we add more episodes, check out the episode list and show notes to find the topics that you need help with. Email me at wendy@aphistoryhelp.com with questions that I might answer on future episodes. You can also follow and interact with me on TikTok and Instagram at AP History Help. This week, I am going to talk about how to be best prepared to take an AP history course. For some of you, school has already started. I know, right? How can you walk into that classroom set up for success? How can you continue throughout the year and ultimately be ready to ace the exam in May? The best way to prepare for an AP class is by preparing in advance as much as possible and setting yourself up for success. If you listened to the last episode of AP History Help, you know I talked about what to expect from an AP History class. And today we'll have a little bit of overlap with that content because knowing what to expect from the course is really the first step in setting yourself up for success. The difference between episode 1 and episode 2, however, is that if you're still listening to this podcast, I'm assuming you've made the decision to take the class. But even if you haven't, this episode continues to let you know that taking an AP course is not just a passive thing that is done to you. You have to take action if you want to ensure your success. P.S. If you didn't listen, there are some real nuggets back in episode 1, so I recommend that you go back and give it a listen or a watch if you're watching on YouTube. This episode is airing on August 14th. And according to my research, about 15% of students have already returned to school, with about 60% of students in the United States going back in the next 2 weeks. And a quarter of you will return to school after Labor Day. By the way, very interesting data was published by Pew Research. If you're a data or an infographic person, I'll put the link in the show notes to that source and to that infographic, of course. Anyway, you're likely getting close to starting that AP course, or you've started. By the way, the early starters actually have an advantage over the Labor Day crew, the after Labor Day crew, since everyone has to take the exam at the same time. So you have a couple more weeks to prepare, but you'll all be just fine. And if you do what your teacher tells you and you stick with this podcast, you'll all be in fine shape. Plenty of people who start after Labor Day get 5s on the exams. So last week I talked about textbooks and how they're really big and heavy and written at a college level. Some of them are pretty good, but they get a little narrative. You know, they sometimes have more information than what you really need. A good review book can help you to get through the content by streamlining what you need to know. There's Princeton, there's Barron's, there's 5 Steps to a 5, and AMSCO. Now, AMSCO, some teachers actually use that more as a textbook. In my opinion, it's somewhere between a review book and a textbook. It's really no frills. There's content, practice questions with no answers, and they address the skills throughout the book. Princeton and Barron's are good because they also provide online content like practice tests with feedback, and they do summarize the content nicely. If you're not sure which one you should get, I would say first ask your teacher and see if they have a recommendation for one over the other. If they don't have a preference, see if you have a friend or a classmate who maybe has a gently used one that they aren't using anymore. And then if those recommendations don't pan out, or if you don't really know anybody, honestly, I'd recommend Princeton's first. I find it to have all the things that benefit you as an AP student. Next, I want to talk about note-taking. Notebooks, notes, Some teachers will tell you what they want you to do as far as taking notes and or keeping a notebook. They have a reason for that. So I'd recommend sticking to your classroom teacher's advice and hang on for our next topic, which is themes in history. However, if you have some free choice regarding notes, here's my advice. Give some careful thought as to how you learn best. Me, as a visual learner, I much prefer to create mind maps. My second choice is outlines, where I write the headings in bigger print and indent and use bullet points to take notes. Cornell notes, I heard some of you groan just now. Stop it. Cornell notes are super useful because they require you to create or answer questions and reflect on what you're learning in the process of reading and note-taking. There are a lot of right ways to take notes, but here's the wrong way. Writing entire sentences and essentially just copying words out of a book. Read it, think about it, summarize in short phrases, label all of your notes with chapters and or key concepts from the curriculum. See last week's show notes for links to the curriculum descriptions and key concepts for each course. If you really want to get organized, color code your notes by unit, either colored paper, colored tabs, or highlighters to help you go back and review just a little bit easier. I like using 3-ring binders a whole lot more than spiral notebooks or composition books because you can move things around, add to it, subtract from it. But if you're using a spiral notebook or a composition book, you're not going to be able to move things around. You'll end up forgetting it, and then you have this loose piece of paper that you add to the notebook. Best case scenario, you glue it to blank pages. Worst case scenario, you stick it in there and then it falls out somewhere and now it's lost. So as far as organizing the 3-ring binder, you can do it chronologically in order of when you do the things, or use dividers for notes, handouts, test prep, essay writing. Also, perhaps create an ongoing timeline, since chronology, time, is so important to all 3 history courses, and add to it as new topics are covered. Again, color coding the events based on the unit that they happened in. Regardless of how you choose to organize it, set it up at the beginning and be willing to adjust it to meet your needs. Up next, I'm going to talk about key concepts, but first, I have my first question from someone who heard episode 1. You might recall that I told you about the student who was taking his AP European exam and was interrupted to be told his car was stolen. Yet he still managed to get a 5. The question was whether or not he got his car back. So the reason they interrupted him in the first place was because the car was found under a highway overpass and they needed his keys. So yes, they found it. And truth be told, I was furious that they would interrupt him during the exam. It could have waited, or they could have contacted his parents. And while the student felt like he did okay, they did give him the option to retake the exam. And after careful consideration, he took them up on it. So the 5 that he got on the exam was from the retake of the exam. There's the rest of the story. Okay, so key concepts are the important ideas you need to know for the course, and they make up the curriculum. There are 9 units in each course. Yes, all 3 history classes have 9 units. And the number of key concepts varies by course and by unit. These are the bare bones, basic concepts that will be on the test. It includes the people, the places, the changes, the causes, and the effects of the course. If you are not sure what you really need to know, check out those key concepts, which are listed in the Units at a Glance section of the curriculum and exam description. You get the topic, the reasoning process, and the suggested skill. But if you keep paging through, you'll find examples, learning objectives, historical developments. Seriously, read those. Go to the table of contents of the curriculum and exam description for the course, Then click on where it lists the units and click on those. This is what all the AP teachers should be using to teach the course, and it's what you should be using to preview and review the content. Each of the AP history classes has their own themes. Why are these important? According to the College Board, quote unquote, the themes serve as the connective tissue of the course and enable students to create meaningful connections across units. These are often broader ideas that become threads that run through the course. Revisiting them and applying them in a variety of contexts helps students to develop deeper conceptual understanding. End quote. I use acronyms for each of the courses to help remember what those themes are. INSPECT is what I use for both world and European history, although what the letters stand for varies for each course. And I use BAGPIPE for U.S. history. I'm running out of time, plus a future episode will delve into what each of the specific themes are and examples of them, but I will put the acronyms in the show notes. One of the themes that crosses all three AP history classes is people or social or society. This is the role that people play, but also the social classes that people are in and the jobs that they do, and so on. It allows you as the learner to see the connections across time and place and time period. So I really encourage you to include the themes in your note-taking process, whether it's highlighting them or putting them in the margin or in the left column of the Cornell notes. Do you know how to do Cornell notes? It is a research-proven way of taking notes. If you don't really know what they are, Google them. If you want more information, there's lots of information out there, or email me. I'll be happy to give you more information. Looking for those themes in the content from the beginning will definitely give you an advantage when it comes to reading and analyzing documents and writing essays as an amateur historian. As a lover and, a teacher of history, I've decided to put a fun fact or a historical connection into each episode. I'll try to make them applicable to all three history classes, though it may not always be the case. It might be too challenging for me. I'm going to call this quick segment Wendy Teaches History. From the category of This Blows My Mind, do you know who Henry Kissinger is? You should. More recent history, well, maybe for your parents or your grandparents, but Henry Kissinger was Secretary of State when Richard Nixon was president in the late 60s, early 70s. You may or may not know that he actually traveled to China before President Nixon did and laid the groundwork for Nixon's iconic history-making trip in 1972. He also, and by he I mean Kissinger, also negotiated or helped to negotiate a ceasefire in Vietnam, and he won a Nobel Peace Prize. Well, he's still alive, and he's 100 years old. And last month, July of 2023, he went to China and he met with China as 100 years old. He went to China and he met with Chinese officials who referred to him as a legendary diplomat. According to the U.S. State Department, he was not acting in official capacity on behalf of the United States, but likely he is acting in an unofficial capacity to help improve diplomatic relations between the two countries. I was just amazed that here is this guy who was instrumental in U.S. history, U.S. foreign relations in the 1970s, and 50 years later, he's still working at it at 100 years old. Okay, on to our next tip for success. If you are enrolled in school for your AP history class, you should be given access to AP Classroom by your test coordinator or by your teacher. Now, don't freak out if you don't know what that is or haven't heard of it yet. It usually takes a few weeks for those accounts to be set up. But look for or ask your teacher about access to AP Classroom. It's run by the College Board, and it provides a lot of great resources for you, the student. First, there are videos that go along with every key concept of the course. Truth be told, they're a little bit dry and boring, but it may be worth watching them, especially if there's a particular topic that you are either struggling with or concerned that it wasn't covered enough in your class. Also, AP Classroom has practice questions, including the written types for every topic and unit. Your teacher will need to open those up for you, but many of my students swear by them. Think about it. This is the company that's making the AP exams. Their practice questions must be quite similar to the type of questions on the exams. So the more exposure you get to them, the better. Plus, every once in a while, teachers might use those questions on their class tests. Using AP Classroom is really on the top of my list of things you can do to set yourself up for success. Speaking of your classroom teacher, be interactive with him or her. Ask questions, ask for help and recommendations. Here are a couple of questions you could ask early in the year. First, what kind of tests do you give? Are they all multiple choice? Are the questions just like the AP exam and stimulus-based, or are there some straight-up fact-based questions? Are there short answer questions, essays? Ask your teacher what he or she recommends is the best course of action for you to prepare for the exam. Also, you might want to know in advance how many opportunities you will have to write a DBQ and an LEQ essay. Unfortunately, it may not be very many due to it taking so long to grade them. You do want to put yourself in a position to practice essay writing as often as possible. That is one of the services I offer as a virtual coach on writing the DBQs and LEQs, document-based and long essay questions, and providing actionable feedback on the essays that you write. You can contact me for more information, or perhaps your teacher knows someone who can help you out where you are. Last, in my suggestions for success in your AP class is some kind of planner to keep you organized. While you can use a generic planner to keep track of all of your courses and homework, I strongly suggest my AP Success Planner. You can see a few sample pages when you go to my website, aphistoryhelp.com. I've designed it specific to an AP history course with attention to the historical thinking skills, the content, and the key concepts you are learning, and even a place to keep track of all the acronyms that we AP history teachers love to use. If used correctly, you'll reflect on the content weekly and be aware of the skills that you're practicing and even which documents you're reading and analyzing. You can order a PDF copy to print out and put in your own folder or binder to create your own planner. Eventually, you'll be able to order it through Amazon, and when that's available, you'll be able to order that through my website. I've even posted a video walking you through the planner and how to maximize each part of it to your advantage. Oh, and I sprinkled a little bit of Wendy dust throughout in the form of bonus pages with great information similar to what I'll cover over the next year of this podcast, like themes and content and specific types of questions and the format of the AP exam and so much more. Okay, that's all I've got for this episode. If you have decided that an AP history class is for you, stick with me. I've got your back. Hit the follow button so you'll be notified when there is a new episode. We will cover all you need to know and be in the best possible position to succeed in the course and hopefully on the exam. Join me next episode as we look at how to take notes. This should be fun for the audio podcast because I can't exactly use visuals, but don't worry. If you struggle with taking notes, I'll get you through with some great instructions that will make the process easier for you. Subscribe to the podcast so you'll be notified when that new episode airs. And do email me at wendy@aphistoryhelp.com if you have any questions or suggestions. That's wendy@aphistoryhelp.com. and or follow me on Instagram and TikTok at AP History Help. You'll be able to comment, ask questions, and interact with me there. Tell your friends who are taking or thinking about taking AP History classes about the podcast. I'm here to help as many students as possible to be successful in the course and on the exam. That will do it for this episode. Don't forget to come to Wendy for AP History Help. And this episode of the AP History Help podcast is now history.